Hi and welcome to today's Mishna. Brura, we're doing chapter 104, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Shelo lehafsik betfilah, to not interrupt or stop in the middle of your prayer. And there are 8 paragraphs. Lo yafsik betfilato, you should not interrupt your prayer. Ve'afilu melech Israel shel bishlomo, even if a Jewish king would ask your peace, ask how you're doing, lo yashivenu, do not reply to him. Aval Melech oved gilulim, but a king who worships idols, im efshar lo lekatzer, if it's possible for him to abbreviate, to abridge your prayer, dahainu, which is yomar tchilat habracha v'sofa, say the beginning of the blessing and the end of it, kodem sheyagia elav, before he will arrive to you, before you'll get there, yekatzer, then abbreviate. V'mi efshar lo, and if it's impossible to abbreviate, sheyatem in aderech yitem. Or if it is possible for him to turn from the road, then he will turn. V'lo yafsik b'dibur, and he won't interrupt with speech. V'mi efshar lo yafsik. But if it's impossible to shorten your davening and it's impossible to move off the road, so you will stop to speak to the non-Jewish king who comes to speak to you. Number 2, haya mitzpalel b'derech, you're praying on the road. Uva b'heima or karon kenegdo, and an animal or a wagon came opposite him. So he's standing in the middle of the road, and this wagon or animal comes, running up to him, it's going to run him over. Yitem min haderech, he should turn away from the road. V'lo yafsik, don't interrupt. Aval b'inyan acher, but in another way, ein latzeit mimkomo. Unless you have some kind of aggressive creature bearing down on you, don't move out of the way. Ad sheyigmor tfilato, until you finish the prayer. Unless you're in the supplications after prayer, in other words, that paragraph of Elokai Natsoli Shani Mira, after prayer, then you can move out the way when you need to, even when it's not such an extreme, dire situation. Number 3, even a snake wrapped around his ankle. So you're sitting there davening, and this snake comes up and wraps itself around you. Lo yafsik, don't stop your amidah. But you are able to walk, so don't stop your amidah. Just walk over a few steps so that the snake will kind of fall off. Aval akrav, but a scorpion, posek, you should stop. Lefishu mu'ad yoter lehazik, because it is literally warned. But what it means is expected. It's more expected to damage. V'nachash nami, and the snake also, im ra'ashu kaus, if you see that it is, word that comes to my mind is angry, but there's a word that provoked, right? Umuchan lazik, and is ready to damage, posek, then you would stop there as well. Number 4, im ra'ash shor ba'kenegdo, if you see a bull coming opposite you, posek, stop davening. Shemarchikin mishortam, because we distance ourselves from even a short tam, literally a simple ox. An ox, he's going to explain, tam she'enu ragil lahazik, that is not common to damage. We don't see this as a particularly damaging animal. 50 amot, you stay away 50 amot, about 25 meters. Umi muad, and from a muad, warned, perishiragilazik, an animal that commonly damages, melo einav, the fullness of the eye, as far as the eye can see. And if the bulls of this place have a status that they do not damage, eino posek, then he will not stop. Then you can carry on davening, even in that case, because you know that these bulls are going to be soft, gentle, and sweet animals. Now let's see the Mishna Brura. So he says, Lo yafsik, you don't generally interrupt your davening in the normal course of events. Ve'afilu remiza ba'alma, even hinting. What he means here is a gesture. Maybe that's a better word. Even just a gesture is prohibited. Im lo letinok haboche, unless it's for a child that is crying. Mutar lo leramez lo biyadav, it's permissible to gesture to the child with his hands, kadei sheyishtok, so the child will be quiet. Velo yatridu mitfilato, and will not bother him, will not disturb his prayer. Vim ill, and if this doesn't help, you should distance yourself from the child and not speak to him. V'chein adam nichbad, and so too an honorable person, she'omeid betfilah, who's busy standing and davening, v'hashaliach tzibur mamtin alav b'amid kadesh kedusha, and the shaliach tzibur is waiting for him for the kadesh kedusha, v'u'einu merutzeh b'kach sheyamtinu alav, and he does not want this, that they should wait for him. V'zeh matridato betfilah, and this is actually bothering him from his prayer. Mutar lo l'ramez l'shaliach tzibur sheyitpalel kedarko. It's permissible for him to gesture to the shaliach tzibur that he should continue praying. Betfilato, in your prayer, v'afilu b'makom hefsed mammon, even in a case where you would end up losing money, ein lo lahafsik, he shouldn't interrupt. Katav Adam wrote, ha'omed betfilah, somebody who's standing in the middle of his prayer, v'nista peik be'ezeh din eichid palel, and he is in doubt regarding a certain law, how he should pray. For example, he forgot something in the prayer. He's allowed to go from his place to a certain place, special, designated, certain place. And to study, investigate, Shamba in a book. And if it's permissible to ask about the law, okay, so can he go to ask somebody what the law is? That requires investigation. It seems to me that that would be okay. A king who worships idols, and that is the case, a forcer, someone who does things beyond your control, the alma generally. In other words, the whole chap of the non-Jewish king is that if you don't show him proper respect, he's going to kill you. So it's the same thing, you're talking about a maga or something. And he is afraid, that's an Aramaic word, perhaps he will kill him. Or if it's possible to move off the road. It is better to abbreviate your prayer when it is possible. It's better than to turn off the road. The Pri Megadim says you could resolve it to that it is implied that if you're walking around for the needs of prayer, that in fact would not be considered an interruption. And if it's impossible to move off the road, it's impossible to abbreviate, so then you stop and you greet him. This means it's permissible even to ask how he's doing, initiate the greeting. When he evaluates, without this, it's possible that it will come into danger. How much more so? That it is permissible to respond to him, to greet him back. Mina derech, from the road, which means avdu sakanta, even though it is a danger, that's Aramaic for sakana, danger. That perhaps the animal or the wagon will run him over. Mikol makom, nevertheless. Since it's possible for him to be saved from this, through moving off the road, it's forbidden to interrupt through speech. To tell somebody else that he should hit with a stick the animal, right? Maybe what the animal needs is just a bit of a clap on the side. Or to shout to the wagon driver, not to come that way, but okay, don't interrupt to go and do those things when you could just move off the road. In another way, in any other compelling reason, we don't interrupt. Chapter 90, paragraph 27, shiny is different. And there, what we wrote about there is because it's for the needs of davening. You shouldn't move. We should shout, in other words, discipline, or no, object to the chazanim who move from their place on Yom Kippur, when they reach that place of anachnu korim, when we all bow down, see all the chazanim who move out the way. As we see in number 621, paragraph 4, Ba'agon, there are more. So what should happen? We set up for him a stender, a lectern, Kenahug beino l'teva, as is the custom between him and the bima. Uve avodah, and when we get to the section of avodah, we're going to be bowing down. Mesalkin hashtender, we remove the stender. Ve'ein tzarich la'kor raglav, so he doesn't need to move his legs. He can bow down and stand back up in the same place without actually moving his legs. But tachanunin, the different status given to the supplications after the amidah, da'az then mutar imay kira l'tzorich mitzvah k'tzat. It's permissible to move around if the moving is for a little bit of a mitzvah. Kogon, for example, ma'ashanu nuagin b'shliach tzibur, or a custom that we have with the shliach tzibur, shetechef achar chazarat hatfilah, immediately after the reviewing the prayer, or keraglav, he sits down, v'yoshev l'tachanun, and he sits down for tachanun, b'imkomot she'noagin lomar tachanun b'yeshiva, in the places that we have the custom of saying tachanun sitting down. V'chein ole lebima l'kriyat Torah, and so too he goes up into the bima for Torah reading. Af shelo igia adayin l'kadish, even though he has not yet arrived at Kaddish. She'im titkabel, the Kaddish im titkabel, she'poseh bo shlos psiot, at which he takes his 3 steps. See, the repetition of the Amidah, he really takes his 3 steps back after the Kaddish. So even though he's now moving around or anything else, it's because he has finished the formal Amidah. Kogon ma'adamrina b'gemara de Rabbi Akiva, like we say in the Gemara of Rabbi Akiva, but with Rabbi Akiva, she'ya adam menicho bezavit, the person left him in a corner, u'motz or bezavit acheret, and found him in a different corner. When he left Rabbi Akiva was davening at this side of the room. He came back, Rabbi Akiva was still not Amidah, and he was on the other side of the room. Merov kriyot v'ishtachaviyot, from the many bowings and prostrations. And this is with the prayers after, the supplications after prayer. But if it's not necessary, it's forbidden for a person to move from his place until he will take those 3 steps. The Olat Tamid wrote, after he finished prayer, before he said Oseh Shalom, Ein isur im akar raglav lemitzvah k'tzat. There's no prohibition if he moves his leg for a little bit of a mitzvah. Kogon, for example, shekibdu oto liftichat aron, they honored him with opening the ark. HaKodesh ba'et shomrim avinu malkeinu, at the time of saying avinu malkeinu, she'olim choshvin zeh k'tzat lemitzvah. The world sees this as a bit of a mitzvah. Nevertheless, but before that, at least he should say, Hashem made the thoughts of my heart and the statements of my lips find favor before you. Lo yafsik, he shouldn't interrupt. This means al yedei dibur, he shouldn't speak. Kogon, for example, say after he has removed the so to this whole paragraph, Hefsek, when after this it speaks about the break, Meir, it's speaking a kol al yedei dibur. Whenever we speak about breaking, we're speaking really about speech. Aval al yedei halicha mutar. But through walking, that is permissible. Shalicha lo nikra hefsek. Walking around is not really the break. V'davka hacha, particularly here, dehu letzorech, where we're talking about it being necessary. La'asir anachash, to remove the snake. So that's what he meant here. Gon lomar. To tell someone else to remove the snake. So that's the break. But walking around, which is necessary, is not such a break. Even though we attribute that, generally speaking, it's not going to be a danger. But if it's not necessary, even walking is considered a little bit of a break, an interruption. In chapter 2, and it's getting ready to injure him. Even if it's not actually wrapped on his ankle, but he sees that it's coming to him, he will interrupt. And if he can escape, through moving off the road, before the snake will come your way, move off the road, and don't interrupt with speech. You can, as we see earlier. And if we're talking about bulls, and a bull that has been castrated, even if you don't know, you're not going to take a break. V'davka shelo hizik me'olam. But this is dafka if it never ever damaged. Aval im hizik afilu pamachat. But if this ox did once attack or gore somebody, even if it was only one time, posek afilu bimkomot she'en regilin. He will interrupt his amidah even in places that is not common. Sha'ar shvarim lahazik, where other oxen would go around causing damage. And that's it for today.